It's a great honor and pleasure for me to welcome to the Dennis Prager Show one more time. Well, another time, because it's not one more. I'm sure there will be others. Zuhdi Jasser. Zuhdi Jasser is president and founder of the American Islamic Forum for Democracy. Zuhdi Jasser is one of those handful of people that has the characteristic that I've told you is the single most important in good prevailing, and that is courage. As I often say, there are very many kind people, very many loyal people, very many honest people, but there are very few courageous people. He is one of them. He wants to see a reform within the Islamic world, and he is a Muslim himself. So, Zuhdi, first of all, welcome back to the Dennis Prager Show.
Dennis, it's great to be with you, and congratulations on the new book. It should be mandatory learning in universities across the country.
It should be, actually. That is, it didn't even occur to me as a desire because it's so remote from, as you know, the state of our universities. It would be, I think, along with any of your books, about the last thing that they would have people read. So, but it's a great thought, and I thank you for it. Zuhdi, let's see, you were invited to speak at Duke. Was it this week?
Yes, I just spoke on Monday, and contrary to the Duke Chronicle's fears and all of the identity politics, the tyranny of the identity politics, that was just amazing. You know, the Duke Republicans, the Young Americans for Liberty, Duke Political Union invited me, and also the Alexander Hamilton Society invited me, but the Alexander Hamilton Society pulled out. And I thought, wow, what a metaphor. That one of the founding fathers who this country was founded in fighting theocracy. I said, imagine if the founding fathers felt embarrassed by the Christians on campuses in America when they were fighting the revolution and afterwards, and said that, you know what, we don't want to offend the Church of England, so therefore we are not going to invite an anti-theocrat in. And they pull out of any...
this is very painful.
A speaker that comes in.
Zuhdi, this is painful. The Alexander Hamilton Society at Duke pulled out?
They did.
On what grounds? What grounds?
Again, they had a vote and they pulled out. Some of them came and thought it was wonderful. What was amazing to me in this is nobody really cares that the newspaper had 3 editorials, a couple of them unsigned, about my work without a single quotation.
That's what they always do. Oh, Zuhdi, that's what they do. That's what the New York Times did to me last year. They said Dennis Prager suggested that same-sex marriage will lead to legalized incest. I never said that, and they never had quotes. And they didn't even say said. They said suggested. This is how they operate. It goes from the New York Times to the Duke Chronicle. So I am totally...
The malpractice of campus journalism. They said,
yeah.
Inviting a regressive cardiologist, Jasser, to campus questions the humanity and safety of our fellow students. And they don't realize the danger of their misinformed fabrications around Islam. So never mind that I love my faith, that the speech was actually about the battle of liberty versus theocracy. They were offended. They were triggered by the title. My title was The American Muslim Identity, Patriots or Insurgents. And they said they're tired of binary choices in Islam. They don't have to defend any of this, and that the college Republicans, similar to Stephen Miller, who graduated from Duke and is now working for President Trump, and they brought in George Wallace and all this other nonsense. It was just an amazing sort of plethora of the title of their editorial, by the way, was Fear and Mongering Comes to Duke University.
Yeah, by them.
Every student.
Fear and mongering.
Every student that was there told me, I don't know what they were worried about.
That's right.
It was actually controversial, but
That's
I don't know what they were worried about.
That's right. That's exactly right. How many students showed up?
About 50. They had
All right, hold on, Zuhdi. Hold on, Zuhdi. I got to take a break. Hold on. I don't want to interrupt you. We'll be back in a moment with Zuhdi Jasser. All right, everybody. Dennis Prager here with a courageous man, and that's the highest accolade I have, courageous. President and founder of the American Islamic Forum for Democracy. He's a believing Muslim. And from within the Islamic world, and of course outside of it, he is trying to make major reforms. And to have people of his own faith treasure the American values of liberty and so on. Now, again, before we continue with what happened to you at Duke, I want to summarize your thinking accurately. I divide, and tell me if this is valid, I divide between Islam and Islamism. Islamism, I tell my audience all the time, is the desire to impose Sharia on a society. Is that a fair statement?
Absolutely. And that's how I divide it, is the Islamic establishment, or the Islamists that run the Islamic republics of Iran, Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, and the viral movements like ISIS are all the same. They're drinking from the trough of theocracy, to the belief that the law should be, the Quran is the source, not a source of law, versus those of us who are classical liberals that believe in freedom and liberty, and that there should be a wall of separation that Jefferson and Locke and others have talked about.
Right. So, one more question on that. There would be Muslim critics who would say there is no difference between Islam and Islamism because Islam does want Sharia to run the world. Well, how would you answer that?
I would answer that before 1789, before the American Revolution, before that, you could have made the same argument in Christianity, and they needed the space, the debate, the platforms to have that debate and let Muslims figure out which Islam they're going to adhere to. I would tell you that, yes, my Islam is certainly a minor minority in the establishment, but I do believe when left to vote, as we saw with the Brotherhood in Egypt, the Brotherhood was ousted in a second revolution. So I think if you had a real election in Iran, the Islamists of the Khomeinis would lose. So this is the revolution that we need to have. And what I told the kids at Duke, the civil rights movement of today is inside the mosques in America. It's not about identity politics. Islam is an idea. If you really want diversity in Islam, let us all have equal positions, from the far left to the far right, from the fundamentalists to the liberals. This is the debate that needs to happen. It's the civil rights movement of today.
Did the Duke University newspaper cover your speech?
They did, and which was actually an impressive thing, is that for all of the false journalism and the lack of quotation, the piece they wrote after it was very fair. They said, Jasser came and said that Islam doesn't have any rights. It's an idea. He rejects the term Islamophobia because it's a way to impose blasphemy, and he defended his own belief in Islam. I talked about my own pilgrimage and my family building mosques. So it was amazing that even with an agenda, when they were forced to cover the speech, they realized that I shared some of the far-left values of feminism, of freedom of thought, of critical thinking, that should be a nonpartisan issue, and it was covered pretty fairly. Unfortunately, one of the reasons the attendance was limited is the administration forced the college Republicans to have it in a more peripheral area in campus. We had to have heavy security, and it was just
I know
sort
that.
of a way for the administration to passive-aggressively not allow us
to... Just for the record, they're doing that to my speech at Columbia University next week. That's exactly what they're trying to do. Put it in a very small venue. It's the only slight difference I would have with you is when you said there's a far-left value, feminism, etc. It is not a left value. It's a liberal value. It's not a left value to have a freedom of thought, which is what you mentioned as being part of them. Just as you divide between Islam and Islamism, I divide between liberal and leftism. So it's just, something to think about, because you're up against the left. You're not up against liberals. And I'm up against the left, too. So that is so interesting. Did any Muslim kids come to your speech?
There were. And actually, a few of the MSA asked a question at the end. They said, well, you kept calling us Islamists. How do you know that we're Islamists? You've never even met us. And I said, well, any group that would stage a teach-in about Islamophobia and fear and spread on your Facebook pages that I'm bringing hate and loathing would be like trying to tell a capitalist not to figure out what a socialist is. And I said, clearly, your agenda, the way you approach my ideas, is to ignore the ideas and target the messenger. And you're proponents of a lack of reform, a lack of a description of how the nonviolent Islamism leads to violent Islamism, is classic deflection of Islamists. So prove to me that you're pro-liberty, not just that you're against terror. Prove to me that you're for freedom and liberty and the separation Association of Mosque and State, and then I'll say you're not an Islamist. But your approach to me last week, before I got here, not approaching my ideas or recognizing that I'm very actually orthodox in my practice, but trying to tar and feather me, is an approach of classic Saudi government and classic Islamist approach. And, there was no response to that.
Well, I'm sure there was no response to it. They don't know what to do with you. You just you confound everything that they believe. Who invited you?
Courageous young leaders at Duke University, the Duke College Republicans, the Young Americans for Liberty, and the Duke Political Union. And I will tell you, the College Republicans took some hit too, because my topic was the American Muslim identity, patriot or insurgent. The Duke Chronicle, the day I was there, had a lead editorial that said college Republicans, patriots or insurgents, and basically attacked them as bigots and hate mongers.
Oh my! Of course. Well, courage will ultimately have to prevail. Zuhdi, God bless you.
Thank you so much for covering this, Dennis. Appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Good man. Zuhdi Jasser is the president and founder of the American Islamic Forum for Democracy. If there is hope in this regard, it's going to come from within Islam. But those of us outside of Islam have to help these people inside of Islam. You're listening to the Dennis Prager Show.